Russia is recruiting citizens of the third countries.
How many Bangladeshis you found?
But they're actually in the combat zone.
Syndicate or those brokers, who are they?
It's not only Bangladeshi problem, it's like a global problem.
They are signing a contract with the military?
They pay this money to go and die in the war.
Have you found any Bangladeshi in prisoners of war in Ukraine?
34 of them died.
What was the situation actually you have felt when you were in Kyiv? Welcome to Decoding Diplomacy. I am Nahid Hossain with you, and today here with me I have invited Ms. Maria Tomak, the engaged researcher of Truth Hounds. Truth Hounds is a Ukraine-based research organization, and they have researched something which regarding some Bangladeshi. Let's start the discussion. Maria, welcome to my show.
Thank you for having me.
Truth Hounds and Fortify Rights both jointly did a research on Bangladeshis who are being engaged in Russian war. What are the reasons that you have started this topic to research?
Thank you for the question. Yes, actually, Truth Hounds is an organization that has been researching and investigating war crimes that are committed in Ukraine since 2014, when the war actually started. And at some point, we came across this issue that Russia is recruiting citizens of the third countries to fight this war against Ukraine. They don't want to mobilize their own population in order to avoid this dissatisfaction of people of Russia with the war. So they prefer, to hire people from abroad. And we, jointly with our partners, Fortify Rights, we discovered that it also is an issue in South Asia, precisely in Bangladesh. So Bangladeshi people being engaged in this war. And to be honest, like when we started to get into this issue, we did not find for sure that this was human trafficking. So we knew that people would join, but this could be like mercenarism issue. But when we started to dig deeper, when we started to discover these topics, and Fortify Rights did a great job with collecting information from the field in Bangladesh, talking to people like in villages, families of those people who died in the front lines or who are missing, or those people who returned, who actually escaped the front lines. We understood, and also collecting information from prisoners of war. That's the work that we did in Ukraine, in prisoner of war camps. So we learned that in many cases, I'm not saying that in all of the cases, but in many cases, people actually might be considered as victims of human trafficking. They did not want to join this war. Mm-hmm. They were not agreeing to go to the war. They were hoping to get some civilian job. As long as many Bangladeshi people trying to look for a job abroad just to, feed their families, etc. So that was they're looking for. But they ended up in the front line signing the contracts with the Russian army without understanding a word what these contracts are saying, because they're in Russian language. And then, sometimes thrown, all the time, every time, thrown into the front line, into the combat. It's a very cruel war. It's not like the special military operation that Russia is talking about. It's a real, very cruel war where drones are used a lot. And people end up being cannon fodder. I'm sorry to say this, but that's how it is. And they're thrown into the so-called meat grinders, just to be killed, or when they're lucky, they might be captured as prisoners of war. Or unfortunately, many end up being dead. Yeah, so speaking of figures, for instance, we don't have there's no official information published by Russia how many Bangladeshis they engage.
But so far in your research, how many Bangladeshis you found?
So who
have already engaged in Russian war?
So we received information, we requested this information from Ukrainian military, because they're monitoring the situation. So we don't have any proved, solid proved information about the numbers. And I think that the number is really higher, but the identified cases by Ukraine is not less than 104 Bangladeshis who were deployed in the front lines, and 34 of them died. actually. So, but
34 of them died on spot of war.
yes, exactly, at the war. And some of them are missing among these people. We don't know how many of them are actually missing and how many of those missing are dead. So it's like really complicated. So we don't have this information because you need to get the like Russian documents in order to get that, or I mean Russian information. But still, I mean, and I understand that even in the regional perspective, it's not the biggest number because there are much more Nepali people recruited or Sri Lankan people recruited. There are more of them. A little bit more Indian, but still I think that's a big number.
I will come later regarding the other countries. Out of these 104 Bangladeshis so far you found in your research, all of them, do you think that they have been trafficked? I mean, human trafficking is the only means for sending them to Russian military?
So, no, definitely we cannot claim that all of them are victims, and that's not our point. But also what's important, we cannot say what's the percentage, of those who are trafficked and those who like willingly went to the front lines. But, even in those cases when people understand that they would go to a war, they are told and they hope that they would do some, restoration work in the occupied territories, or they would do some cooking, whatever. But they still end up being thrown into the battle, sometimes without acknowledgement that they're thrown into the battle. So they were told that this is training, they think that they're going to be trained and then they understand because they're being shot at by the drones or by artillery, whatever, that they're actually in the combat zone. So that's why, I mean, but of course not all of them. And again, if you look like globally, so there are people who go willingly, but even those people, they oftentimes face kind of very harsh attitude, like they might be beaten by the commanders, their documents are confiscated, like they cannot use the phones, etc. So again, like we're not claiming that all of them are victims, but that certainly is a problem. And it's not only Bangladeshi problem, it's like a global problem.
Whatever the number is, irrespective of the numbers, there are some victims of human trafficking. Bangladeshis are being engaged in Russian military to the war. They are being sent. But have you found the syndicate or those brokers? Who are they? They are from Bangladesh or they are only from Russia? Are they deliberate to recruit those Bangladeshis to send for Russian military, or they are general human traffickers? They are just generally recruiting Bangladeshis to send anywhere of the world?
So that's a really good question. And actually, in our report, we do not publish the names of the companies, that agencies, and the name of the brokers for the security reasons for the families and survivors. But like what you can read also in our report is that this is being investigated, and we should compliment the government, Bangladeshi government law enforcement, for investigating these human trafficking like networks and the way how people being like engaged in all this. And that was not our purpose, to investigate this connection, which is really a very important thing. That's totally true. But, what we have to consider, like definitely, at least we can say, it's safe to say that Russia is benefiting from these human trafficking networks. Probably this is human trafficking networks that existed before that, but now they're kind of serving to the purposes of this Russian aggressive war. And also what's important to understand that it's less from what we learned from research in Bangladesh, it's less relevant maybe for the Bangladeshi people, but the recruitment takes place both in the countries like Bangladesh, for instance, but also from Russia. So those people who are going to work in Russia, they're automatically under the risk of being engaged in the Russian army. It's not because they're not clever. And they are not, they can't distinguish, but sometimes people are placed into really vulnerable situation, like they might be arrested by police, for instance, for on the trumped up accusations. We see that in the number of cases, and when they're imprisoned, they might be blackmailed. So either you will be incarcerated or join the Russian army, and you will be okay, and you will get the money, $2,000 per month, or or they might be deprived of visa, or their visa is not prolonged, for instance, and that's how they are. Either you're deported or you join the army. So we can see that these both issues are it can be both, but obviously it's not. It cannot happen without the acknowledgement of Russia, because they're signing the contract with the Russian Ministry of Defense. That's it's not. They're not joining the private military companies or stuff like that. They're joining the Russian army.
Can you just elaborate this signing contract things? I mean, Bangladeshis are going there who are joining to Russian military. They are signing a contract with the military?
Yes, exactly. So all of the cases that we were managed to establish, they're concerning Bangladesh and all the other countries. They always signed the contracts with the Russian army. So now, previously, maybe too many details for the audience, but prior to 2022, when the full-scale invasion started, Russia was relying a lot to the private military campaigns like Wagner Group, like Redut, others, and they were hiring foreigners there. But after some events happened in 2022, 2023, there was this internal conflict in Russia. But the point is that now they integrated all of the private military companies into the Russian army. And they signed the contracts with all of the foreigners. But also, on this side, when you just look at those people, because, we were interviewing prisoners of war in Ukraine. And when you interview those people, these are not like mercenaries. Mercenary, they look like, I've seen some mercenaries, when the war started in Ukraine in 2014 in Donetsk, there's the guys, huge guys with the Kalashnikov guns. They look like they're this mercenaries, something that you can associate. But people that I've seen kept in prisoners of war camps, these are poor things, that were trapped into this whole story. Not all of them are saint and innocent, but a bunch of them being just dragged without their acknowledgement and understanding what's happened. But, going back to your question, I want to say that I think that it's something that Bangladeshi government, I feel like they already started to doing with this law enforcement efforts at investigating, but this is something that probably law enforcement can and should figure out and establish whether there is a connection, what kind of connection, and that's how they could stop, this inflow of Bangladeshi people that fuels Russian aggression against Ukraine. And because I can speak on behalf of Ukrainians. We certainly don't want people joining Russian army because it prolongs the Russian aggression and the war in my country. But also it's not beneficial for Bangladeshi people because, especially, what outrageous is when people pay money to brokers. They pay $1,000 to $5,000 in order to get, recruited. And they pay this money to go and die in the war. So this is horrible. And we can see this pattern in Bangladesh, in Nepal, in other countries less. So that's why I think that this is a regional special thing that is related to some regional human trafficking networks, obviously. So people tend to pay money to recruiters.
But initially they don't know that they are going to engaged in some war situation.
Yes, that's the point. So they pay money to get some civilian job, to earn some money, to send them back to their families, to pay these debts. But their family are in debts. Those who paid the money, they go to a war and die there. So this is a horrible situation for everyone.
So soldiers or the people are being arrested or captured by Ukrainian authorities. They are being called prisoners of war. Have you found any Bangladeshi in prisoners of war in Ukraine?
So yes, just to be clear, they are captured in the front line. It's not an arrest because it's not done by law enforcement. It's done by the army. And they're treated according to Geneva Conventions as prisoners of war because they have the contract side with the Russian army. So they're perceived not with their citizenship, like as Bangladeshi or Nepal or whatever, but as representatives of the hostile army. Yes. So, and And yes, and according to our information, we get this information from Ukrainian Coordination Headquarters for Treatment of the Prisoners of War, a special agency that was established for these purposes, to communicate and deal with the prisoners of war. There are no Bangladeshis so far in the Ukrainian captivity.
One question I have to ask. Since Truth Hounds is a Ukraine-based organization, research organization, and you have researched this thing, what is going on between Russia and Ukraine. So how can you clarify of the authenticity or the fact-based, believable of this entire research? Since you are from Ukraine, you will talk on behalf of Ukraine only.
Yeah, I'm not denying that I'm talking on behalf of Ukraine. It's like we are a Ukrainian-based organization and we live in Ukraine. Like I live in Kyiv, I experience shellings every other night. So I sleep in my bathroom. I cannot sleep in my bed because you have shellings. And in the bathroom, at least there are 2 walls. And if there are shahed, targeting my house, I have a chance to survive. So in the previous winter was really bad. There were shellings of our energy infrastructure. It was minus 20 outside, no heating. So this is the war that we live in. And of course, I'm not hiding, our interest is as also human rights defenders is that this war is stopped. And and that's why we feel sorry that people would support this war by joining the Russian army. We don't think that it's a proper thing to do. But I don't think that we have any a conflict of interest concerning this report.
Or in biasness.
Yes, it's I don't think that there's any point where we can be biased. Yes, so, but there's also recommendations towards Ukraine in this report. So we think that Ukraine has to examine the cases of the prisoners of war. It's less concerns Bangladesh because, as we said, there are no prisoners of war. And I don't think that Ukraine would hide this. What's the point? We think that these cases should be examined, prisoners of war should be examined, and those who were victims of human trafficking should be treated as such. And there should be some solution, because, the problem is also with prisoners of war. That's a whole different story, but Russia does not request them in the prisoners of war swaps. So they can stay in the camps forever, because there's no way of them, returning home, or they're not sentenced, so they're not criminally investigated, so they're prisoners of war, and they just stay in the camps, and so and that's a problem for them, and there are no way that these people can be how this issue can be solved in further. There's no answer.
But I want to go back to your story. I was really touched listening what you have said a moment ago. What was the situation actually you have felt when you were in Kyiv?
This war started for us in 2014 when the peninsula in southern Ukraine was occupied. I was also there. I made several trips there in order to document this invasion that started at that point. It didn't start in 2022, it started in 2014. Then the war was fueled with the intervention, Russia supported Russian-backed forces in eastern Ukraine. So that's actually when the war started. It was largely overlooked by the international community. First of all, our partners who were not able to go against Russia as it should be done. And then this fueled the war that started in 2022, and war of 2022, the large-scale invasion of Russia, this is something that every single Ukrainian family felt, because either our relatives are fighting, or our relatives are affected by the war, or we are the internally displaced persons or refugees or etc. So, but still, many people like me, we live in Ukraine. We just live in our apartments. Sometimes it's really challenging. Ukrainian business, of course, is suffering because of all these things. But we just learn to be resilient, and I can tell you it's not so much related to the war, but probably to our previous revolutionary situations in Ukraine. We survived several revolutions throughout previous decade and a half. And just today we meet with some people here in Bangladesh, and I feel so many things in common. When you struggle with building institutions, when you struggle with launching some new kind of society and civil society like free media. So this is looks very familiar to me, and I mean that's one of the reasons I also feel bad, because what we have also in common is this war. It appears to be which is strange, and I just don't think that Bangladeshi people are consciously supported. I don't think so.
Can you share an experience of the most horrific or terrible days you have passed in Kiev?
This is, I don't know. There were I can recall in November of the previous year, Shahed hit the building right in front of my house, so this opposite my house. And I will never probably forget this sound, of the Shahed that is just landing, and this explosion. And since there, I started to freak out when I hear this sound, something flying over me. I just noticed that I cannot control my emotions, and I immediately start to to find a place to hide, something like this. So this is pretty common for Ukrainians now, because sometimes some nights normally attacks takes place in the nights, and we have hundreds of rockets and around 1,000 up to 1,000 Shaheds on one city, on Kyiv. So this is big city, but it's and casualties can be in every single neighborhood of Kyiv. So this is unfortunately what we face.
What is the situation now there?
I can say so today. We're in the start of March, and this for us it's a good news, because previous winter was the most complicated winter, not only throughout Ukrainian history, of the recent years, and of the war. That was the most complicated winter in the war, because we weren't lucky with the weather. It was up to -25, really cold, and Russian army was hitting our energy infrastructure on purpose, And this is it's hard to explain with the military even, purposes, because it was targeted on the Ukrainian civilian population, just for Ukrainians to surrender, to start to pressure our government to surrender. But this never happened, I can tell you that my sister, she has a 4-year-old child, my niece, they stayed throughout this month in Kyiv, that was not comfortable. But I mean, it's not because it's just because people just don't want to surrender. We're not like that. So we're just fighting for, again, it is something that's familiar for Bangladeshi people. We just try to fight for our independence and our identity. We're not Russians, we're Ukrainians. We have our identity, we have our language, we have our literature, and we don't want to be Russians. And that is all about this, we say no thank you. We want to be neighbors, but don't occupy us. We don't like this.
Come back to Bangladesh again. Regarding the research, what you have done regarding the Bangladeshi being engaged in Russian military, have you presented this report to Bangladeshi government?
So actually, we have a presentation official presentation of the report on the 3rd of March. But before that, thanks to our colleagues from Fortify Rights, they're working in Bangladesh. They have really connections here, and we made several meetings with the political parties that now newly fresh after the elections, and also with the Ministry of Labor. I feel really optimistic after these meetings, because I felt those people whom we met, they're really interested in this matter. So they're also driven, after this, again, electoral process, they feel they have to bring something new and important to the agenda of the country and to their people, to deliver something to their people. One of the meetings was in the Ministry of Labor, and this person who met us, he still had like his shelves in his cabinet was empty, so he just came there. But we appreciate that he found time to meet us and listen to us and assure that they would monitor these agencies and these brokers who were into this business, so to say, into this enterprise, and they would react. So, like, I feel like I feel optimistic because, again, I'm not an expert, but I feel like those people do care about Bangladeshi people, and I think it's very important because, like, in some other countries, you have this feedback that, we would rather sacrifice people's lives, but we will preserve good relations with Russia. I don't think that is a good way of dealing with this issue.
You met the political parties also. Which political parties you have met?
We met BNP and Jamaat.
What were their expressions or observation regarding this topic or research?
So they are concerned, definitely, and it's not the first time that they heard about this issue from us. And as I said, like, I felt that there is a genuine interest from their side, like what they were expressing, genuine interest to stop this issue, like to stop Bangladeshi people from going to Russia, but also to somehow secure return of those who are already engaged back home, and also, to help families, those who cannot return bodies of their beloved ones who died in this war back, So I felt that there is like a willingness to combat this issue.
I'm pretty sure you have interviewed or met some survivors who already managed to escape from the war field to Bangladesh. They have returned. Can you give me an overview of what they have told to you?
So actually, these interviews that were recorded here in Bangladesh, they were recorded by our colleagues from Fortify Rights. So we were doing more the work on the Ukrainian side, interviewing prisoners of war and talking also to Ukrainian authorities. But I mean, in general, like the pattern is the same. Like people don't know that they're going to participate in the war, those who were interviewed precisely for this matter. So that's why they tried to escape there, because they didn't want to die there. They were not signing up for this, actually. Yes, so I think that's the main thing to that needs to be mentioned. And also, I mean, by the way, so Russia promises high payments, and what also people got trapped into is these promises of Russian citizenship sometimes. But normally they either don't get the payment at all, or they don't get the payment that were promised them. Sometimes they're just deprived of their bank cards, just being like taken by some commanders, and they kind of benefit financially from it. It's not in all of the cases, but sometimes it happens also. And it happens a lot that people don't get this payment as well.
What are the recommendations you have made, based on your research you're giving to Bangladesh government to maintain or to observe?
So we made recommendations to Bangladeshi government, but also to Russian government, although I think that's totally useless, to be honest. We've also made recommendations to Ukrainian government and to the international organizations that deal somehow with trafficking, and that, to our standpoint, can and should intervene, just to intensify this process. So as for the Bangladeshi government, it's pretty kind of maybe obvious, but of course to go after those agencies and brokers who do this stuff, like to stop this process, to prosecute them and bring to responsibility. Also to demand from Russia to withdraw Bangladeshi citizens from the front lines, which is, I should say, that's not I think that's a challenging thing to do, because Russians did it only in one case, as far as we know, when Prime Minister of India, Modi, publicly talked to Putin and mocked him for this, and that's how they withdrew. Like, no other people were withdrawn from any other country, so it won't be like an easy task. And of course, to support victims of human trafficking, those who are considered to be as victims of human trafficking, to support them, to provide them proper, like everything that should be provided according to international standards. Yes, and also there is one general recommendation, and like again, so Bangladesh was supporting the UN-related resolutions at the United Nations General Assembly. So Bangladesh supported 2 resolutions when the full-scale invasion started in 2022. And of course, we would appreciate if Bangladesh would take like stronger position on this war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine, and maybe like make a statement or whatever, just to highlight that this is an illegal war in which also Bangladeshi citizens are suffering, although they shouldn't be.
So, do you really think that following these recommendations, these sort of things, human trafficking and sending people to Russia, these sort of things can be curbed down, not only for Bangladesh, for the entire South Asia?
You know, actually, I think that there were some progress, and also these actions that were already done by the Bangladeshi law enforcement. It affected the situation, because in 2026 and in the end of 2025, we haven't seen any big inflow of people from Bangladesh to Russia. So, like these actions, they really work. But I also believe that if Bangladesh would take a stronger position, that would also result in it will result in good dynamics, you know. I'm not sure whether, you know, it's like not, they might be not for public, you know, some talks with the like Russian diplomats or whatever. But I think that in this situation, Bangladesh has all the rights to talk, you know. Not very polite with the Russian embassy, you know, and to make them understand that they should not do this. So, but I think that the best way, of course, is to investigate it at the domestic level, all of those who might be engaged somehow in this process of recruitment. But also, you know, what's very important, and we discussed it today with the Ministry of Labor, if some people from these countries would go to Russia to work, so they have to be instructed very well. Because, you know, even if they go to work in Russia, as I described previously, and the fact that they might be hired in some civilian job, it doesn't mean that they're secured from ending up in the front line. So that's how it all works. So I think that's also a responsibility, obviously, of the governments of various countries whose citizens are trapped in this, just to flag them that it's not safe to go to work to Russia. If they can go to work to other countries that are more safe, more secure, that would be probably a better choice.
Maria, thank you so much for coming to my show, and I really wish you that in Ukraine peace will come back.
Thank you.
And not only in Ukraine, every part of this world will be in peace. Thank you so much for for giving your valuable time in my Decoding Diplomacy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
I was talking to Ms. Maria Tomak, who were involved in a research regarding the Bangladeshi who are being engaged in Russian war. And we get the information from her research, and I'm pretty sure these things will be addressed by the government also. Thank you so much for watching Decoding Diplomacy.